Hi everyone, it is Mandy McIntosh, and tonight I am asking you to help me try to solve an unsolved mystery.
Join me. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.
Now, this is my final appeal before I finish up writing my book, and I'm aware that I'm going to be a talking head for at least 15 minutes. So I hope you'll stick with me, especially if you live in the state of Iowa. I'm hoping maybe somebody out here knows this story and can add some information to it, especially if you live in the state of Iowa, because that's where our story starts. So, for the last year, I have been researching an Oddfellows coffin. The Oddfellows were an organization that was like a secret society, and they had an induction ceremony where they would use a skeleton in a coffin. So, this coffin originated from Iowa. It now resides at the Sleeper Mortuary in Iola, Kansas. You can visit them for a historical tour, or you can rent out the facility for a paranormal investigation. And I will include their website in the description on whatever social media platform you're watching this on. So the story with this coffin is that in the 1990s, all the Oddfellows lodges in Iowa shut down and they consolidated the items that were in the lodges into different cities. So we don't know where anything originated from. And then they were auctioned off. Now, part of the story is already untrue. All the organizations that are Oddfellow societies have not shut down in Iowa. However, over 75 of them did in the 1990s and into the early 2000s. So it is a good bet that this probably did happen with just a little inaccuracy there. Now, these items were supposedly sent to Guthrie Center, Iowa, in the 1990s. And when this coffin arrived, they opened it up and they found a body inside, which is unusual for the Oddfellows. They used skeletons. It was the body of a 14-year-old Native American girl. Now, she was removed from the coffin and supposedly buried in one of the cemeteries, and there are like six of them in Guthrie Center, Iowa. The coffin was apparently then put into storage for almost a decade because it was auctioned off around 2003, 2004 in Guthrie Center, Iowa. A lady that doesn't live in Guthrie Center but lives pretty close by purchased the coffin and used it at her home as a decoration for 20 years. And then she sold it on Facebook, and Tori Westoff, who owns Sleeper Mortuary, purchased the coffin to be used there. So I thought that it would probably take a few phone calls to some places that people may have not thought to call, and that I would find this girl's gravesite. And that has not been what has happened. So I know I'm going to get like helpful comments telling me to call historical societies and places like that. So I have contacted historical societies, genealogical societies, libraries. I have pestered the poor archaeologist of the state of Iowa at least 4 or 5 times, thinking I might have found something and having her research that out. And I thank her for her patience. I have contacted funeral directors. I have contacted auctioneers. There was an auctioneer that did used to auction off Oddfellows relics at Guthrie Center. So that is also plausible for our story here. Um, I have contacted vital statistics, police departments. I have kind of left no stone unturned. Now, if there are other organizations beyond this and you know about them, please drop them below because I'd be happy to call them as well and ask some questions. But so far, your normal people that you would go to, and even above that, I have called. Um, I have gone to Guthrie Center, Iowa. I have gone through every one of their graves. So the thing with graves in Iowa is that a lot of the graves are made of limestone. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if she was really buried in the 1990s, and they should have a death certificate where she was buried. They have all the burials at Vital Statistics in Guthrie County, and they cannot find her. However, they only go back to about the 1930s. And I'm starting to believe that this person was probably buried in the 1900s. And unfortunately, with those limestone graves, we might have been looking right at her and not known it was a tombstone of somebody who was unnamed because they have deteriorated so much. So I have even been through the graveyards and then talked to the people that are responsible for those graveyards, as far as most of them are owned by the county and the state. Um, so I have done all that as well. Now, as far as paranormal evidence goes, I definitely got some things while we were out around the coffin. Now, did we pick them up from the area that just happens to be there because I did a Native American medicine wheel? Maybe we attracted in some Native American speakers. Totally possible. Have seen it happen before in investigations that I have done. However, when we were around the coffin, I was trying to get a tribal name for this person, like what tribe she came from, and we very clearly had Sioux. We got the word Sioux. We had the lights light up for Sioux, both the EMF detector and tracker lights. Now, the Meskwaki tribe, Meskwaki Sox Fox tribes, they're in charge of working with the state archaeologists for Iowa, and they would be the ones that would decide where remains would go, or any artifacts that were being returned would go. And so they aren't familiar with this case. I went out to their settlement. Totally recommend you go check out their museum there. It's a really nice small museum, but they're not familiar with this either. So, um, we were at the coffin. We got Sioux. The Sioux were in Iowa, even though they're not recognized as a tribe there now. And when we were around the coffin, we scried on a map and it landed around the city of DeSoto. And as soon as we said DeSoto, every piece of equipment that I have went off, and I've never had that happen before, but we're talking REM pod, EMF, tracker lights, all of it went off. And so I thought it had to be fluke, that something had just come through and created this. So I asked several more times, and it happened every single time. Now, I'm not going to get into all the details of what kind of happened from there, but obviously we went to DeSoto. Again, talked to everybody in DeSoto. Nobody was familiar with the story. There hasn't been an Odd Fellows Lodge there in quite some time. They're not even recognized as an older lodge that closed on the Odd Fellows database. Um, so we're not sure that it originated from there. However, we did visit all the cemeteries there, and it might have not been the last one, but close to the last one. No, it was the last one we went through, was Oakland Cemetery, and there was only one Oddfellow grave there. And when I went through the graves, I asked if any Oddfellows knew what I was talking about, if they could give me some information. And so this person I asked, are you familiar with the Native American girl that was in the Oddfellows coffin? And he immediately answered yes. It was like having a conversation with someone. So I asked where she was, and we got a word that was hard to understand, but sounded like Arscott. So I came home from that trip and spent months racking my brain, looking at maps, trying to do research, and basically found Ascot, Iowa. And so we decided to take another trip back out and see if we could figure anything out. We went to Ascot. It's a very small town. We didn't find anything there. It's mostly farmland. However, we visited the cemeteries around Ascot, and one of those happened to be Fairview Cemetery. Now, I am not psychic, but I have had some psychic-y things happen during this investigation that kind of blow my mind, to be honest. One of the things I did before I left, I kept having a dream about a cemetery, and it looked, I saw Oakland, but I knew I wasn't at Oakland. And I have a Reiki practitioner that did Reiki with me and then taught me how to do Reiki. Um, we did a session together where we kind of tried to channel this. And so I told her that I was back in the graveyard and it was Oakland, but not Oakland. And she described in very great detail a house. But we didn't know what any of it meant. And so on this trip in Council Bluffs at Fairview Cemetery, you turn off Oakland, and that happened to be the cemetery that I had seen in my dream. I was able to tell the person I was with some landmarkers as we went and tell her where I was in the dream. Um, it just so happens that there is a historic house right before you cross the street into Fairview Cemetery, and it was owned by Cunningham R. So I am doing research on him. I have not contacted everybody I need to for him because I've been busy trying to find her. And I haven't looked into all of his past. Definitely some of it. I've been able to pull up his court cases and such. If you have information about him, I would appreciate that too. But definitely looking in that area. And what I have found through my research is history does seem to line up with this. The Sioux were in that area. So that's all interesting, but it doesn't lead me to this girl. The goal of my research is to find her and preserve her story. And then Tori and I would both like to see her get back to her tribe, if that is a possible thing to make happen. We wanted to make sure she got back to her tribe, because that is just appropriate, and we're hopeful we can do that. So, if you have any information about this coffin, if you've heard the story and can add to it or even validate it, please contact me. If you are vaguely familiar with anything that I haven't researched yet, anybody I haven't mentioned, I would appreciate you dropping their contact information for me below. Um, I am going to try to promote this through Iowa. My hotspots again seem to be Guthrie Center, DeSoto, Iowa, and Council Bluffs area of Iowa. It's possible that Davenport might be of interest to us as well, but when we visited there, it didn't turn out anything significant for us. We've also gotten the name Allison a couple of times, so we're not sure where that factors in. There's an Allison cemetery that didn't seem to be meaningful, and there was an Allison city that we went to, but weren't able to flush anything out of there as well. So if you're in any of those areas and this sounds vaguely familiar to you, I would love to hear from you. You can drop a comment on my video. You can privately DM me on any of my social media sites, or you can email me. I will put my email address in the description, but it's prodigalpandawssc.com. I'm hoping one of you out there can help me solve this mystery and help us tell this girl's story. Thank you for listening.